The film begins in the New York subway. A man in poor clothes is sitting in his thoughts, but this peace is broken by a group of gang thugs. They intimidate passengers looking for reasons to fight. Their leader, called Anton, doesn't scare some people and they run away. Anton sees the poor man and thinks about going and challenging him, and after a few words, what an idiot he is, Anton tries to steal the man's bottle. But the man grabs Anton's hand and holds on tight, and Anton is startled by this reaction. This man is not just any his name is John Reese, a former ICA Special Forces agent abroad in the country. He's already fought a lot and seen a lot of deaths up close, and dealing with those amateur bandits wouldn't be enough for him. Anton tries to pull his hand away though, but now John decides to let go. But Anton is still wanting to fight. John finds himself in a tense situation when a group of young men corners him, mocking him for not bringing enough alcohol for everyone. Unaware of who they are dealing with, they attempt to intimidate him. However, John reacts swiftly, incapacitating them by breaking their hands, striking their sensitive areas, and hitting their throats just enough to leave them gasping for air. As a result, all 5 are taken to the police station. Officer Carter reviews the security footage before stepping into the holding room where John is being kept. She jokes that he should have landed a few more punches on the troublemakers. While she tries to engage in small talk, John remains silent. However, Carter devises a subtle way to learn his identity. She offers him a fresh cup of water, making sure to touch the inside of the cup rather than handling it normally. Excusing herself, she hands it off to the forensics team, who analyze the fingerprints and cross-check them against the police database. The results reveal John's true identity and his involvement in multiple crime scenes, along with 4 active arrest warrants spanning different countries. Clearly, John has a long and complex history. Despite Carter's curiosity, John is soon released by a mysterious lawyer who escorts him to his employer, Harold Finch. A wealthy man with access to vast amounts of information, Finch appears to know everything about John's past, including his self-destructive tendencies. Finch offers John something he believes he desperately needs, a purpose. He takes John to the heart of New York City and explains that a person dies every 18 hours in the city. But what if they could prevent some of those deaths? Finch claims to possess a list of individuals connected to imminent crimes, but with one critical flaw. He doesn't know if they will be victims or perpetrators. He points John toward a woman named Hansen, insisting that she will soon be involved in a dangerous situation. However, John is skeptical, dismissing Finch as nothing more than a rich man obsessed with his ex-girlfriend. He walks away, effortlessly neutralizing Finch's men when they attempt to stop him. Later, John checks into a hotel and shaves to alter his appearance. That night, Finch sets him up by playing an old audio recording of a murder that occurred 3 years prior right in the next room. He taunts John, remarking that he arrived too late, just as he was too late for someone named Jessica. This reveal suggests that John once had a loved one whom he lost. Though furious, John is forced to acknowledge the painful truth. Realizing that Finch's mission might actually save lives, he agrees to work with him. Finch takes John to his operations hub, where John learns that Finch's so-called list consists of social security numbers rather than names. He begins his investigation, narrowing down potential threats against Hansen. 2 individuals emerge as suspects: Wheeler, her former co-counsel and ex-boyfriend, and Pope, a gangster she previously sent to prison. John follows Hansen and attends Pope's trial, where Detective Fusco testifies. After the trial, Hansen confronts Fusco for deviating from their agreed plan. Later, she visits Pope in prison, expressing doubts about his guilt. Through a covert microphone planted on her phone, John overhears their conversation and learns that Pope is protecting his younger brother, Michael, who unknowingly witnessed a murder. It becomes evident that Pope is taking the fall for the crime to shield Michael from the true killers. The next day, Wheeler sneaks into Hansen's office and searches her computer for information on Michael, raising John's suspicions. That night, before the real perpetrators can reach Michael, John intervenes, using a grenade launcher to disable their truck. He rescues Michael and seizes the attackers' police badges, revealing them as corrupt officers. John keeps a close watch on them and soon discovers their connection to Fusco. The corrupt cops eliminate anyone who threatens to expose them, while Fusco orchestrates the wrongful convictions of innocent people. Now, John is determined to uncover the full extent of Harold Finch's knowledge and motives. Harold reveals that after the 9/11 attacks, The government hired him to create a powerful machine capable of analyzing vast amounts of data from cameras and microphones across the country. The machine generates two lists, one related to potential terrorist threats and another focused on everyday crimes. While the government only cares about the first list, Harold secretly built a backdoor to access the second. However, the machine only provides social security numbers, meaning they must investigate further to determine the nature of the threat. John continues his work, convinced that Hansen is in danger. However, he soon discovers that she is actually working with the corrupt cops, who, the night before, murdered Pope in his cell. Hansen instructs them to eliminate Wheeler as well, as he is getting too close to the truth. As John pieces everything together, Fusco suddenly appears behind him, gun drawn. John is taken into custody, but while Fusco is transporting him to the desert to kill him, John manages to escape and returns to New York. Meanwhile, the corrupt officers are preparing to murder Wheeler and frame a random thug for it. Just in time, John intervenes, preventing the setup. He then outsmarts Hansen by manipulating recorded conversations, exposing her involvement. Finally, he blackmails Fusco into working for him, knowing he will need an inside man within the police force. A few days later, John steps into an elevator and casually strikes up a conversation with a man named Bill, who is holding a bouquet of flowers. John asks if they're for his wife, but already knows the truth. He remarks that some women leave their partners when they find out they've been unfaithful, while others hire two men to stage a botched robbery as a cover for murder. As he speaks, John swiftly takes down the two men who were following Bill and advises him to find a good divorce lawyer. The next day, the machine provides Harold and John with a new number. This time, it belongs to a girl named Teresa. However, her case is unusual. Harold takes John to a cemetery, explaining that, according to official records, Teresa is supposed to be dead. Her father was a real estate developer who went bankrupt after the market crash. Overcome with despair, he allegedly killed his family during a weekend trip before turning the gun on himself. But if Teresa's number has appeared, it means she is still alive. John visits Fusco and orders him to retrieve the case file from the police database. Fusco, having no choice, complies. After reviewing the details, John concludes that the so-called murder-suicide was actually a professional hit, staged to look like a family tragedy. Harold is curious about how John is so certain, and John simply states, "Because that's how I would have done it." Using his advanced tracking systems, Harold locates Teresa, and John moves in to find her. However, Teresa realizes she's being followed and manages to evade capture. Later, John visits Harold at an office where he appears to be working, only to discover that Harold actually owns the company, using his position as a cover to remain hidden in plain sight. John hands Harold a small device Teresa left behind, which turns out to be a skimmer used to steal credit card information from ATMs. Apparently, she has been surviving by committing financial fraud. Determined to find out who ordered the hit on Teresa's family, John starts asking around and learns that a hitman known as Solnick carried out the killings. Solnick is currently in prison for an unrelated crime, so John visits him. The hitman admits that he refused to kill Teresa because he has a personal code. He never kills children. Instead, he warned her that if she ever spoke about him, he would return to silence her. However, when John presses for information about the person who hired him, Solnick reveals that he only met the employer once and was paid in cash, leaving no trail. Meanwhile, Teresa tries to sell stolen banking data online, allowing Finch to track her location. John finds her, but before he can secure her safety, an assassin appears. John intervenes, rescuing Teresa and taking her to a hotel. There, she confesses that her father blamed his brother, Derek, for his financial ruin. John confronts Derek and uncovers the truth. Derek conspired with two powerful contractors to have his brother eliminated, knowing that he would inherit his land. With property values skyrocketing, that land is now worth 40 times its original price. However, since Teresa is the rightful heir, the conspirators are now trying to eliminate her to prevent any legal complications. John tracks down one of the contractors and makes a bold move, ramming a truck into his car. He demands that the hit on Teresa be called off, but the man coldly informs him that the assassination is already in progress. Back at the hotel, the hired killer searches for Teresa. As Harold attempts to escort her out through the fire escape, the assassin corners them at gunpoint. Just in time, John arrives and takes him out. The following day, John contacts Carter, telling her it's time for them to meet. However, when she arrives at the designated location with a team of secret officers, John is nowhere to be found. Instead, she discovers Teresa, safe and alive. At the police station, Teresa is reunited with her aunt. Detective Carter tries to extract information from her, but the girl claims that the trauma of her experience has left her with memory gaps. She insists that she cannot recall much about the man who helped her. Meanwhile, Reese visits Harold in his office again, only to find that Harold has relocated. When John calls him, Harold reminds him that he values his privacy and requests that Reese only contact him when necessary. A new case, Joey the Soldier. There isn't much time to rest, as the machine provides them with a new number. Finch discovers that it belongs to a man named Joey, a decorated military veteran. Reese begins surveillance and learns that Joey now works as a groom at a hotel. One day, Joey sends a cryptic message and abruptly leaves work. John follows him and ends up inside a bank, where Joey and his accomplices commit a robbery while wearing masks. Reese is unable to intervene as he is pinned to the ground. When a security guard tries to reach for his gun, John stops him, knowing it would only escalate the situation. After the heist, Harold suggests turning Joey in before anyone gets killed, but Reese wants to dig deeper. He suspects Joey was a good soldier who somehow got involved in bank robberies and wants to understand why. John investigates further and discovers that Joey is part of a network of former soldiers who commit heists. He gathers intel and approaches a former sergeant named Sam, who owns a bar. Pretending to be a veteran looking for high-paying work, John gains Sam's trust. To get closer to the group, Finch arranges for the team's current getaway driver to be arrested, creating an opening for Reese to step in. Soon after, John meets Joey's team and starts working with them. Meanwhile, Carter reviews the bank surveillance footage and notices John's back as he saves the security guard, sparking her curiosity. Later, Reese reports to Harold, noting that Joey doesn't seem like the kind of man who would kill someone. He believes there's a difference between taking lives in war and harming innocent people. To get closer to Joey, John accidentally runs into him and strikes up a conversation. Joey tells him that their jobs depend on Sam's orders. The two bond further after getting into a bar fight with a pair of bankers. When Reese asks about his personal life, Joey avoids the topic, only mentioning that he has certain obligations. The heists continue. A few days later, the gang calls Reese for another job. Meanwhile, the police identify one of the gang members. This time, the crew targets an underground gambling site run by the mafia. They successfully pull off the heist and escape just before the police arrive. Sam prepares the team for another job, and Finch believes it's time to put an end to this. However, Reese asks for more time. He wants to protect Joey. Through surveillance, John learns that Joey has connections to two women. One is his girlfriend, and the other is the wife of his fallen comrade from the war. The soldier's widow recently had a baby, and Joey has been robbing banks to provide financial support for her and her daughter. For their next mission, the gang is tasked with stealing evidence related to a man named Elias. Finch uncovers that Sam is planning to betray the team and warns Reese. As expected, once the job is done, Sam turns on his crew and starts killing them. Reese intervenes just in time to save Joey and urges him to leave town for his own safety. Later, Sam delivers the stolen case files to an unknown figure. When Reese tracks him down, Sam is already dead. A doctor's revenge. After the intense case, Harold decides to visit a doctor not just for his back pain, but also to steal a hospital radio. The machine has provided them with another number, Dr. Tilman. Reese starts monitoring her and quickly realizes she leads a lonely life, completely devoted to work. One night, she decides to go out to a nightclub. A man flirts with her, but Reese intervenes before anything happens. Inside the club, Reese notices another man, Andrew, who had bumped into Tilman earlier that day. Suspicious, John subtly bumps into Andrew, only to discover that he is carrying drugs. John digs deeper and learns from the bartender that Tilman frequents the club alone every night. He suspects Andrew has taken an interest in her. The next day, Reese breaks into Andrew's apartment and steals data from his computer. Reviewing the files with Harold, they uncover that Andrew is a predator who preys on women. He has a sealed criminal record from his college years, but it was mysteriously erased. Meanwhile, Carter examines the surveillance footage from John's previous heist. She notices a brief interaction between one of the robbers and Harold, though Harold later lies, saying the man simply told him not to stare. That night, Reese watches as Andrew approaches Tilman in the club. They flirt briefly before leaving together. Andrew invites her to his place, but she declines. As Andrew walks away, Tilman secretly follows him, using her camera to zoom in on his movements. Reese consults Fusco, asking for Andrew's deleted criminal record. Upon reading it, John pieces together the full story. Years ago, Andrew was accused of sexually assaulting a young woman in college. However, the case was dropped because the victim waited 2 days before reporting the incident, making it difficult to prove anything. Overwhelmed by trauma, the woman later took her own life. That woman was none other than Dr. Tilman's sister. The machine flagged Tilman's number because she is planning to kill Andrew as revenge. The final showdown. Reese formulates a plan to make Andrew disappear before Tilman can go through with her murder. He rigs Andrew's car with drugs and stages an accident, leading to his arrest. However, Andrew is quickly released the next day. Furious, Reese learns from Fusco that Andrew is wealthy and has an elite team of lawyers. That night, Dr. Tilman takes matters into her own hands. She breaks into Andrew's apartment and tases him. Dr. Tilman's revenge. Dr. Tilman drugs Andrew and places him in a wheelchair, transporting him to her van. However, Reese intervenes, confronting her about the man she is carrying. Andrew is tied up in the back of the van, unconscious. Reese persuades Tilman to sit with him and listen. He tells her that if she goes through with this, she will lose the most important part of herself. Tilman is not a killer, she is someone who helps people. Eventually, he convinces her to abandon her plan. Reese then takes Andrew to a secluded location, where they have a tense conversation. John struggles with a moral dilemma. Should he allow Andrew to live, believing that people can change, or kill him, assuming that people never change? He questions whether there are truly good people in the world, or just good decisions to be made. He also wonders which he will regret more, letting Andrew live, or ending his life. Finally, John asks Andrew to help him make the right decision, and the scene cuts to black. A new target, Judge Samuel Gates. A few days later, the machine provides Finch with a new Social Security number belonging to Samuel Gates, a Supreme Court judge known for his fairness. Judge Gates has built a reputation for taking a tough stance on crime, which means he has likely made many enemies. Reese begins surveillance and notices that several men appear to be following the judge. One of them makes a move, prompting Reese to prepare for a fight, but instead of attacking, the man pulls out his phone, sends a message, and throws the phone into a dumpster. Reese retrieves the phone and reads a message referencing Samuel's son finishing school. Realizing they've been watching the wrong person, Reese turns just in time to see a group of men attempting to kidnap Judge Gates's son. He tries to stop them, engaging in a fight, but one of the kidnappers pulls a gun and shoots him. Reese drops unconscious, and the men escape with the boy. The kidnappers demands. Soon after, Judge Gates receives a phone call from the kidnappers. They inform him that they have his son and instruct him to wait for further contact, warning him not to involve the authorities. Devastated, the judge is desperate to comply. Reese, now recovered, approaches him, offering his help. "Who are you?" the judge asks. Reese simply replies, "I'm here to help you." The two head to the judge's house, where Reese assesses how the kidnappers bypassed the security system. Finch, working remotely, tries to hack the phone company to trace the kidnapper's call, but is unsuccessful for now. Meanwhile, Reese visits the nanny's house and discovers that she has been murdered, likely forced to reveal the security code before being killed. Finch eventually helps Reese track down one of the men from the earlier surveillance. Reese interrogates him, discovering a tattoo identifying him as a member of the SP9 gang, an Eastern European criminal organization that has now expanded into New York. That night, the kidnappers call the judge again, but their demand isn't for money. Instead, they want him to dismiss a case involving a woman named Angela. If the judge rules in her favor, they will return his son. #### the truth about Angela. Judge Gates, desperate to save his son, stalls the trial as much as possible. Meanwhile, Finch uncovers that the SP9 gang has operations in 18 countries. Reese interrogates another gang member and learns about a location where the criminals receive their payments. He raids the site, fights off 2 guards, and finds $500,000 in cash. At the same time, Finch listens in on a phone call between Angela and the gang leader. He pieces together that Angela works at a bank developing software to detect money laundering. However, she has been secretly turning off the system for 3 minutes every morning, allowing SP9 to move their illicit funds undetected. She is directly aiding their financial crimes. To confirm this, Finch infiltrates the bank, posing as an employee, and steals data from their servers. #### the courtroom decision. As the trial resumes, Reese continues searching for the judge's son, but the boy is not where they expected him to be. With no other option, Judge Gates is forced to rule in Angela's favor. Not guilty on all charges, he declares. Immediately after the ruling, the gang boss calls the judge, instructing him to pick up his son. However, Reese warns him that the gang is planning to kill him. When Judge Gates arrives at the designated location, the gangsters tell him to say his final goodbyes to his son. But before they can execute him, Reese arrives with Angela, using the information he has gathered to expose her involvement. He reveals how she manipulated the bank's system to facilitate money laundering for the SP9 gang. Realizing their operation is compromised, the gang boss declares that the entire operation is burned and orders his men to kill everyone. A shootout ensues, with Reese and Finch's team ultimately taking down the criminals. Afterward, Finch provides the authorities with evidence against Angela, ensuring that she is sent to prison. When the police arrive, they find Angela and the surviving gang members tied up. NYPD, anybody home? An officer calls out as they secure the scene. #### a new target, Zoe Morgan. With the case resolved, the machine provides Reese with another number. To get close to the next person of interest, Zoe Morgan, Reese poses as her driver. However, Zoe is cautious and calls the company to verify his identity. What she doesn't realize is that Finch is the one answering the call. Zoe Morgan, the fixer. Zoe Morgan calls her contact and covers for Reese while he drives her to a location where she buys a gun. However, back at her apartment, Finch discovers another gun. Reese notes that the only reason she would need a second firearm is if it were untraceable. As Reese drives Zoe to an event, she changes her clothes in the car. Suspicious of her actions, he decides to follow her, believing she could be the perpetrator in their latest case. At the event, Zoe meets with a high-ranking police officer and hands him the gun. Their conversation reveals that the weapon belonged to another officer who had lost it, and Zoe retrieved it to save him from trouble. Afterward, Reese drives Zoe home. As she gets out of the car, she tells him, "Be here tomorrow 10 sharp." When Finch asks Reese what he thinks is going on, Reese explains that Zoe is a feek, someone who does favors for money. This kind of work makes her a target, meaning many people might want her dead. A murder connected to Marlene Elias. Meanwhile, the police discover the dead body of a man who was once the prime suspect in an old case involving a murdered woman named Marlene Elias. The case file, stolen in a previous episode, belonged to her. Detective Carter speaks with the officer who originally worked the case, uncovering crucial details. Marlene Elias was a waitress at a cocktail bar owned by a mafia don. She had an affair with the don and pressured him to divorce his wife. When he grew tired of her, he hired the now-dead suspect to kill her. At the time, the don used his influence to buy the case, allowing the killer to walk free. However, Marlene and the don had a son, who may now be the one responsible for stealing the case file and eliminating the original suspect in his mother's murder. Zoe versus Mark Lawson. Soon, Zoe finds herself in danger when she crosses paths with Mark Lawson, the heir to a powerful pharmaceutical company. She had previously retrieved a recording of his illegal affair, but after Lawson killed the reporter who had the evidence, he now wants Zoe dead to eliminate any loose ends. Reese intervenes just in time, saving Zoe from Lawson's men. Meanwhile, Finch goes undercover, posing as a major shareholder in the pharmaceutical company to gain access to Mark. His investigation reveals that Mark didn't just have an affair, he also murdered the woman he was involved with. But the situation is even more complicated. The woman had been preparing to expose a massive scandal about one of the company's new drugs. Knowing this, Mark couldn't afford for her to go public, so he silenced her permanently, exposing the truth. Reese and Zoe break into the pharmaceutical company's headquarters, hacking into the system to recover deleted files. Finch pieces together the information, uncovering a shocking revelation: the company's new drug has a 3% mortality rate. Out of 200 test subjects, 6 had died. This rate was dangerously high, but the company had paid off authorities to keep it under wraps and secure FDA approval. Unfortunately, Reese and Zoe are caught before they can escape. Tied up and facing execution, Mark prepares to kill them. However, Zoe calmly tells him, "Hope you don't mind I emailed a copy to a friend." Realizing the evidence is already out, Mark tries to negotiate. Zoe agrees to take him to the person holding the report on the condition that he lets her live. Before they leave, she whispers to Reese that he wouldn't have trusted her, then discreetly slips a paperclip into his hand. Using the clip, Reese frees himself, kills the guard watching him, and rushes to save Zoe before Mark can kill her. With the evidence exposed, the pharmaceutical company is brought down, finally facing justice for their crimes. Parting ways as Zoe and Reese part ways, he warns her, "Stay out of trouble." She smirks and replies, "That's not an option for me." See you next time on the Scenario channel.